Green Transition Show. With me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. Today, we are going to talk about a very important topic, recycling. We're going to look at recycling. We'll explore the role of recycling in the green transition, what works and what does not work, and what exists globally, and how innovation and policy can improve recycling systems in both developed and developing countries. With me is Mr. Martin Grohman. Mr. Martin Grohman is a former Mayor of Biddeford in Maine. He's also the former Executive Director of E2Tech. E2Tech is Environmental and Energy Technology Council of Maine. Welcome, Martin.
Welcome, Francis. Thank you for having me. This is fun. It's a great show. I'm pleased and honored to be on.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself to our viewers and our listeners and tell us how you became interested in recycling and waste systems.
For sure. So I'm here in Maine. I live in southern Maine, just north of Boston, about 90 miles north of Boston in the US. And I've been interested in recycling kind of my whole life, I guess. I grew up on a small family farm, and as you know, on a farm, you never throw anything away. You could always find a scrap piece of wire or something that you end up needing to fix something. So I think I was just kind of brought up into it, and I started my career in the plastics industry. I worked for a large international company called GE Plastics, and then I worked for an extrusion company called Cincinnati Millicron. I was selling and servicing the machines that are used to make plastic pipe and garden hose and things like that. And I started getting a lot of requests to help set up plants to make composite decking, which is a sawdust and wood fiber and plastic together. And it's a great way to use recycled plastic and recycled wood fiber. And being from Maine, I knew there was a lot of wood fiber up here, so I started my own company making that material. Well-known brand names are TimberTech and Trex and AZEK, and I started a company that made kind of a high-end version of that. So that's how I got my start in recycling.
Okay. And okay, so that was what first made you to develop the interest in recycling? Just following up on what you said.
Yeah. Well, I think overall there's just a lot of opportunity in recycling. I know here in the States, we kind of take material and we just stuff it in a bag or a dumpster and we throw it away. And very often that material has significant value. But, whether it's shoes or clothing or, my sort of personal passion is plastics, that material has got a lot of value. So if you can collect it, clean it, and so forth, you really can build a business. So that's really my message, I think, to entrepreneurs out there is everything in recycling is a big opportunity. We know about materials like cardboard and aluminum that are widely recycled and usually profitable to recycle, but there's lots of other materials as well. And so it's a big market opportunity.
Okay. You talked about how you grew up in, working with materials and thinking around sustainability. Uh, so what specifically influenced your thinking about recycling?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'd take it back to kind of the value thing where I just hate to see valuable stuff getting thrown away. Um, I know I'm just coming back from a conference a couple 3 weeks ago in San Diego with uh, members of the recycling industry, including in the textile and clothing. And with fast fashion now, that there's so many clothes, and so we're all kind of buying stuff and sort of throwing it away quickly, and then obviously shipped to your door like Amazon and so forth. You have all of this material that's arriving all the time, and there's really dramatically increasing volumes of material in the waste stream, and more of that stuff is valuable. So uh, the conference is really about you're starting to see spring up, for example, here in the US, there's all these collection boxes, kind of metal collection bins that you'll see on the side of the road, for your clothes and shoes. And though that's a for-profit enterprise, that material is worth something like 25 cents a pound. So there's plenty of people out there that will go through that material and sell it for thrifting or anything like that. So I just think that's one example of the way our economy is changing, where we're consuming more stuff, frankly. We've all got more clothes, more pairs of shoes, more, and when we can, click a couple buttons and have another pair of shoes here and right away. So the opportunity and frankly the need to recycle that material. And later on, I want to get into my thoughts about landfilling, but um, I really just want to convey, I think, frankly, there's money in recycling.
Okay. Viewers, if you are watching us, this is the Green Transition Show. With me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. I have an important guest today to talk about recycling. He's Mr. Martin Grohman. If you are watching us for the first time, kindly hit the subscribe button. It is 100% free. You don't have to pay anything for it. And share our videos, comment on our videos, and share with your friends as well, so that they will also subscribe. So now my next question is, when we talk about recycling, many people view recycling simply as waste management, but I believe recycling goes beyond waste management. How does recycling actually contribute to climate action and the green transition?
Yeah, thanks, Francis. By the way, I mean, the show is great. I busted out a green shirt just for you today. Of
Oh,
course, it's
thank you.
St. Patrick's Day coming up here too, but I've enjoyed some of the prior guests. Ines Pereira in particular, I thought, as somebody who kind of built a career in sustainability, I thought she made a lot of good points about having a personal brand in sustainability too that extends beyond, um, what you do, how you identify as far as being an employee of a company, but sort of be known for something. And that's what you're doing here yourself with the show. So I think that's great. Um, yeah, back to the question about climate change or recycling. So here's where I get into kind of my bigger and maybe possibly somewhat controversial idea. Um, I don't necessarily think that all recycling is good. For example, uh, if you have a hard to recycle item here in the northeast of the U.S., for example, glass is like that. We don't have anywhere closer than Denver that processes glass, and so that means you need to truck this very high value excuse me, a low value, high weight material all the way, two-thirds of the way across the country. The fuel usage to do that, it outweighs any benefit of recycling that glass. So, and there's other examples like a multi-layer film plastic. I brought an example. This is kind of a stand-up package, right, of a laminated film plastic. It's a great package. It doesn't weigh it weighs almost nothing, but it the recycling is tough. And it has this laminate film that has barrier properties, so it has long shelf life and so forth. But as far as grinding it up and reusing it, uh, the life cycle assessment would not tell you that it's worth doing. As a matter of fact, this is the controversial part. What I
Yeah.
think is it's better to just put it in the landfill. It's going to be sequestered there for however, 100 or 500 years. It's not going to do any harm in a modern landfill. So I think recycling that has a clear life cycle assessment benefit makes sense. That tends to be the bigger established markets where the processors are pretty close and you don't have to truck a lot of material around. Here for, for us in Maine in the northeastern United States, that's going to be milk jugs and cardboard and things like that. But a lot of the other material, I think should just get landfilled.
Okay. Um, so which materials in particular are much harder to recycle and which are not?
That's it. So, interesting perspective, right? So, I think we need to be thinking a lot about how we label materials. I'll pick on this one again, where, I don't think it has anything on here telling you at a really technical level what it's made of as far as the multi-layer film having an EVOH layer or something like that. Um, these are tougher materials, though, any
Yeah.
kind of multi-layer laminates. When I was in the composite decking business, like I said, making a product that's used on boardwalks and beaches and patios and so forth. One of the things that I did, because it's a mix of two materials, I said, let's label on there what this stuff is. So we actually had an inkjet printer on the bottom that would say 60% wood, 40% polypropylene. So, long after we're gone,
Yeah.
25 or 50 years from now, somebody could look at the bottom of that board and say, okay, that's what this resource is. So, to answer your question, I mean, I think it's fairly obvious, but generally speaking, the stuff that's well, I always like to say you can recycle enough of anything if you can recycle anything if you can get enough of it in one place, right? So, uh, a very hard to recycle item. This would be another one. This is a particularly hard type of material to recycle. This is like a laminated film, right? And with um, that layer, and I don't think it's practical to recycle something like that. But on the flip side, it weighs almost nothing. It lets the cookies get to you fresh, so you're probably much less likely to throw them away. It doesn't mean I don't think it's an environmental win. I just don't think it makes sense to try to recycle it.
So what you are saying is that it means that it is important for policymakers and businesses to understand, these differences that you've outlined. Why is that very important?
Yeah, I think businesses that are looking at packaging, um, you need your shelf appeal. It needs to look good on the shelf. It needs to, kind of pop. But if you can label it not just with the Chasing Arrows label with the number, but actually with the true resource content, so that someone who's interested in collecting a large quantity of that material and recycling it uh, can easily do so and determine what the material is. I think that's really important. And then here's what I think really works is if in your product itself, uh, or maybe another company that you partner with, you can create demand for recycled products. I mean, one of the things that's happening now in the recycled markets is we have actually too much material. Oil prices. Um, one thing
Yeah.
probably not much good about the current state of international affairs with the war going on, but it's oil pricing going up is very good for recycling actually because it makes the difference between the virgin raw material and the recycled material less. For a long time now, quite a few years, at least here in the States, we've had a situation where with oil being so cheap, 70 or 80 bucks a barrel, it actually is cheaper to just use new virgin plastic instead of using recycled plastic. So the only thing keeping the industry alive has been uh, states or uh, manufacturers like Coke has done a nice job with this, where they have a minimum recycled content for their bottles. So they're trying to pull in recycled PET, and that creates a market for that material. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be competitive. So, with the international market dynamics right now, with crude going up, I actually think it's going to really help recycling. And, you know, oddly enough, that's sort of one thing that we need to keep the economics of plastics recycling going the right direction. Because what I'm hearing, at least here in the Northeast United States, is there's too much recycled material out there in the world of plastics.
Yeah. I know you earlier on mentioned that it's not everything that should be recyclable. But some people believe that everything should be recyclable. But
Yeah.
in reality, is that the case? Is it possible?
Well, I'm going to try a little thought exercise with you and our viewers today. And let's see if it lands. So uh, I'll start with uh, what do you know about how long plastics last? Like, is plastic a really durable material? I mean, it is, right? So if you think
Yeah, it is.
about
Yes.
plastic, and it washes up on the beaches and so
Mm.
forth. It's a tough material that
Yes.
lasts, some people say 500 years. That might be generous,
Yes.
but it's a
Yes.
long lasting material. And then what do you know about uh, how long things last in a modern landfill, right? So if we all hear stories, at least where I am, where we'll dig up a landfill that was closed in the 1970s, and you open it up, and you can still read the newspapers and see the bones from the fried chicken dinner or something like that. So in a modern landfill, things are not really breaking down. Um, they're held in there in kind of a closed cell. And then this is a three question thought
Yes.
experiment. So the third question is, how do you define carbon sequestration? So we use in sustainability, we use that lingo, carbon sequestration. So the generally accepted answer is the storage of carbon for 100 years. So if you're tying up carbon for 100 years time, that will qualify for a credit, and that could be done in wood or anything with a high carbon content, including plastic. So
Yeah.
maybe you see where I'm going with this now. I think this is a little bit of armchair science, but it's also based in my work doing life cycle assessment. If you take some of these materials that are hard to recycle,
Hmm.
and I'll pick on these and these, it's just you're going to put a lot of effort into recycling those. You're going to use a bunch of energy that will not be supported by doing a life cycle assessment. It will not be less energy to recycle them than it would be to just use new plastic. At the same time, if you take that carbon, stick it in a landfill, I think we can all agree it's going to tie up that carbon for at least 100 years, probably longer. And
Yes.
that's what we want. So my premise is landfilling hard to recycle plastics and other materials is fine. I think we should do more of that. We should stop trying to fight uh, to get these kind of unusual materials sorted and cleaned and using and wasting all that energy. They're harmless in a modern landfill. And that's frankly where the carbon came from, is in the ground. Let's stick it back in the ground, and that keeps CO2 from rising in the atmosphere. So I'd love to get viewpoints on this or
Yeah.
comments. I've kind of been testing this theory out with friends and family, and some people kind of spit out their coffee and say, Marty,
Yeah.
you're full of it. But it's something I want to sort of test and expand on. So to sum up, I think if you've got a good defined recycling market where you're clearly going to come out ahead, and use less energy and raw material, and it's more sustainable to recycle it, great. But if not, landfill it, you know, don't overthink it.
Okay, you've talked about landfills. I'll ask you a question on that. But before that, I would like to know what do you think about relying so heavily on recycling? What are the risks associated with relying so heavily on recycling to solve our waste problem? Because many
Yeah.
people have said that, recycling will help deal with our waste problem, particularly in developing countries in Africa and Asia, Latin America, etc. What are the risks associated with relying heavily on recycling to solve our waste problem?
Yeah, I'm super interested in this, Francis, that I really be interested in your perspective, which I think is greater than mine, and maybe that's something for a future show or for another guest or something. But here where I sit in my kind of corner of the US, but I think this is at least a North America wide viewpoint. I don't know about the rest of the world, but uh, recycling makes you feel good, right? If you take the material, um, it kind of reduces your guilt. You feel like, well, I could buy more because it could be recycled, and it extends across a lot of sustainability related things. I have solar panels, so I could use, I can have a hot tub, or um, I can drive more because I have an electric car, or things like that. And I'm no different. I mean, I do these same things too. But I think recycling, uh, particularly, I'll see. So we use this lingo. We'll say wish cycling. Wish cycling is, geez, I hate to throw this garden hose away, or these Christmas lights, or this plastic, film or something. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they know what to do with it. Well, you know what? They don't. A lot of that material is just going to end up contaminating good recycled material. You're much better putting it in the trash, let it get landfilled. Um, and so I do think this kind of this wish cycling or kind of guilt-free mindset of consumption that comes with recycling is, I think it's unfortunate. I'm not telling or trying to attempting to tell any of us not to, enjoy life. And I'll say at our house, we have a hot tub, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm no different, but I think the mindset is interesting. And so I think what you're getting at is the first step is clearly, when possible, reduce trips, combine trips, buy less, um, buy bulk, all the things that you already know. But don't think that just because it's recyclable, it's free of all impact,
Yeah.
because that's clearly not true. It can have a reduced impact, um, but there's not no impact.
Okay. You've talked about modern landfills helping to deal with some of the materials that are not recyclable or that are difficult to recycle. Can you throw more light on this perspective?
Sure. I mean, I can try to. Again, this is a kind of a U.S. or sort of regional viewpoint, but uh, at least here, and I'm not saying this is right, but landfilling is cheaper than recycling. Um, in parts of the U.S., I'll pick on Texas. I mean, landfilling is almost comically cheap. It's like 40 or $60 a ton. So you're talking about 1 or 2 cents a pound to just stuff, throw things in the ground, And there's no way that you can collect, sort, wash, clean, grind, and pelletize and ship plastic,
Yeah.
for 1 or 2 cents a pound. It's not close. You're probably in the 20 or 30 cents a pound to do that. So uh, you're going to have some pretty strong economic drivers to compete with landfilling. And then at the same time, with a modern, well-constructed landfill, that's free of leachate and so forth, it's not per se a bad process, in my view. So again, I'd love to have listeners or test that and point out the holes in my theory. But that's really the way it's looking to me. I think if it's a material that will be stable in the landfill, that won't break down and cause problems, um, why not sock it in there? Now, we could get into food waste a little bit. For myself, I mean, I think clearly landfilling food waste is very bad. Like that's the opposite of my theory. I think landfilling stable products like plastics is fine. Putting stuff that should be composted that clearly is going to break down and give off methane in a landfill, that's not okay. So I really are, here in the States, something like 40% of our trash is actually food waste. So I think that's a really, really significant overlooked issue. Or people tend to say plastics, you're the problem, but actually much of it is really food waste that's the problem.
Yeah. Viewers and listeners, if you are watching us or listening to us, this is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. We have an important guest today to talk about recycling. He's Mr. Martin Grohman. In future discussions, I would like us to talk about the global waste systems and
Yeah.
example, for instance, using the textile industry, because most of the secondhand clothes in the West, particularly in the US and Europe, end up in Africa, and these secondhand clothes are helpful to a very large extent, but they also create problems. They're also creating problems for us in terms of waste generation. So in future discussions, I would like us to dwell on that. But I would like us to focus now on the hidden recycling opportunities that exist. How do we leverage on the opportunities? So some materials have very high recycling value, but others are thrown away. One example is alkaline and primary batteries. Can you throw more light on that? Why are batteries important to recycle from both an environmental and economic standpoint?
Yes, for sure, Francis. And I have a couple of props for this, so viewers just bear with me. Hold on.
Yes. This is great. He's showing us an example so that we'll get to appreciate and understand whatever explanation he
All
has
right, making
to.
a little bit of a racket here. So
Yes, yes,
that's all right. So alkaline batteries, hopefully this starts a discussion, okay?
yes.
Here's just my premise, my thought. So I have here's kind of maybe a month's worth of batteries in our house, right? We have
Yeah.
so many of these batteries, and you just are going through them, and you kind of you think it really just strikes me as an amazing opportunity because there's got to be value in all this stuff, right?
Yes.
And there's just, I mean, there's a lot of energy and things that went into it, and this is also a material. I know for me, when you talk about landfilling, um, if you talk to a landfill operator, they'll say something like, "Oh, you could throw batteries away, but just not too many at once." And I think, well, how can that be right? So I'm excited about driving a discussion around that. Sorry about the extra noise. I think the producers of batteries really should be arranging to collect them to be working on a circular economy and get those batteries back and reprocess them and grab that material. So I've started a small business to do this myself, and it's called Hello Cycle. So here's what I do. It's a subscription service, and I send you an empty box, and in that box you can put all kinds of stuff, including batteries in all these little spots, and I arrange for them to be recycled. Um, so it's a funny thing. A lot of subscription services, they send you a box with something in it. I send you a box with nothing in it, and you open it up and you could put light bulbs and CDs and cords and cables and things like that in there, and I get those materials recycled. So uh, that's been a fun little business for me to work on. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. I have a good number of subscribers, some of them been with me for years, and I have a good battery recycling partnership with a company called Serba Recycling Solutions, and I'm excited about it. I think it's a good idea, and I think it's maybe just one example. I'm not saying my idea is the best idea, but if you look at the things that are going in the trash, like batteries, I'm just somebody I look at that and I go, oh my gosh, those little things have got to have value. And how can we set up a market, a circular market somehow, because that material that's in an alkaline battery I think has the potential to go into a future alkaline battery. That's something I don't think should be landfilled.
Mhm.
And so, um, yeah, check out hellocycle.com, see what you think, and give me your suggestions if you find it valuable. Um, you can subscribe, you can cancel anytime, and it clears out your junk drawer. And we'll take your old CDs and light bulbs and cords and cables and batteries and get them responsibly recycled.
Yes, I'll check it out after the show, and I encourage our viewers to do same.
Yeah.
So, what talking about batteries? So, what materials or what valuable materials can be recovered from used batteries?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So, a battery, an alkaline battery, sometimes they call it a primary battery, is basically kind of like charged dirt. So there's a little bit of metal in each end, and then there's a plastic separator with some electrolyte contained in there. So you get the drive that creates the battery. But that dirt essentially in there is pretty valuable because it's been highly refined to get all of contaminants out of it. For example, you'll see that batteries are mercury free and so forth. And so that's really the most valuable stuff. There's a little bit of plastic and paper in there, but that's probably contaminated, frankly, by the electrolyte. But the kind of charged dirt that's in there, and then the anode and cathode, which are little pieces of metal, those have got value. So this is a classic where my little premise is if you can get enough of anything in one place, you can recycle it. So uh, getting very large quantity of these batteries together, and then the current recycling method is just to grind them and then filter out that cardboard and plastic and that little bit of metal. Down the road, I think a process maybe to kind of unpeel them or take some other way that's a little more sophisticated than just grinding it to get at the material and keep the different components separated will probably be the best process. I don't know if I'll be the guy to develop that process, maybe, but if anyone's aware of anything like that, because it is they are dangerous. They're not without danger. You have to be careful, and but because there is that potential energy in them, but there's also a lot of potential value in them.
Yeah, yeah. And I also believe that one of the challenges we are facing is the collection systems that are put in place to increase the recycling of batteries. So, what improvements will you recommend within the collection systems or policy, or what policy
Yeah.
measures do you think could help increase battery recycling rates?
Well, uh, a regime that is called extended producer responsibility is definitely catching on. We have some U.S. states that have adopted EPR, extended producer responsibility for batteries, and actually here in Maine and also in Vermont and I think in Oregon and California, there's EPR for batteries legislation now. So it basically require the manufacturers to set up collection system. So if you're getting an Energizer or an Everready or a Duracell battery, they'll need to set up a bin or something like that to collect those materials at the places where you buy them. And I think that could work. I think, I'm surprised some of those manufacturers haven't done that already because, a good efficient collection system is going to be able to compete with mining the raw materials to make batteries. So that really gets back to my original premise, which is that there's a lot of value and frankly money in recycling. Uh, there's even lingo sometimes I'll hear, they call it urban mining, where some companies are springing up to take uh, not the recycled stuff, but actually your trash, and then sort through that and go through it because some people throw a lot of valuable stuff away. So that's the premise of urban mining. So yeah, taking it back to batteries, that EPR regime, it's confusing. Extended producer responsibility. Frankly, I don't think it's a very good name, but I think that, I mean, you're absolutely right, Francis, right? So the collection systems are the challenge
Yeah.
for all of these things, especially as stuff, with a couple of clicks, I could order something that comes from the other side of the world. And how is that manufacturer, producer really going to be able to influence what I do to recycle that material, 5,000 miles away? That's not really very practical. So there's a lot of work left to figure that out, but it is catching on. I mean, putting my, mayor and city councilor hat on, the way the costs work now is, the property taxpayer, the homeowner, ends up paying for all of that disposal, and that's not necessarily fair because whether or not you threw anything away, you end up paying for it. And so I think that the economy around kind of circularity will change over time.
Yeah. Just to, I'm going to, put you on the spot. I know you are a technical person, you are a technical expert, particularly in the area of life cycle, sustainability,
Yeah.
and, environmental issues generally. But at the same time, you are also a political leader and you've served in political office, you have vast experience in politics. So, in your view, do you think when an expert technical aspect is in political office, it helps with some of these things compared to one who is just a politician. What is the difference?
That's a good question. I mean, I think they kind of are different skill sets. It's nice to, yeah, definitely my interest in recycling kind of helped me move through, getting to attaining different political offices. And lots of people who are, doctors or, PhD researchers like yourself end up finding success in politics. But I would also say they're pretty different skill sets. And in a way, um, serving in office as a mayor or councilor or a state representative, you you end up being spread kind of a mile wide and an inch deep. So I think being able to talk the language and ask maybe some good questions is really helpful. But I think I could probably have more environmental impact by building a successful recycling business. But I think you could get there either way, I guess. Certainly, some of environmental policies that get passed by politicians can have a long and lasting effect. So I guess I would put it like this: it's good to have a partnership where um, certainly anyone in political office hopefully sees the value in expertise and if you're going to mandate recycling, let the policy uh, get built um, by people that are experts in it, including, manufacturers and property owners and things like that. I'm not somebody as a politician who wanted to kind of like, stick it to the business owners and make them pay more or something like that. I would always want to partner with those people and get their best ideas. So that I think is the best approach.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. Yes, for that honest answer.
Yeah.
Viewers and listeners, if you are watching us or listening to us, this is the Green Transition Show where we unpack issues related to policy, innovation, technology within the green transition, sector. So here, I would like us to focus on innovation in the future of recycling. What role should technology and innovation play in improving recycling systems?
Oh man, good question. I think that big opportunities, you mentioned collection systems, Francis, where where I live, we have a curbside bin and you throw everything in there. All kinds of recognition around that, like what is in that bin. So the ability to quickly sort it and estimate its value, possibly read, the barcodes on it, even as it's sort of being tipped into the truck and so forth, I think are useful. Taking it back to the politics, something that a politician could do, for example, would be to pass a law mandating a minimum recycled content. And that I think is one of the very most effective things that can happen. I have this with me. This is a well-known brand, right? We've all seen this, and what would be the impact of saying, okay, this little lid has got to have 25 or 50% recycled content in it, or maybe it's not this product, maybe it's another one, but that kind of thing creates a demand pull that is good for the recyclers. Um, you know, I think that's really the dream is where we set up systems where there's value at every step. We've all heard about say like copper pipe or copper wire being stolen from job sites, which is a horrible thing, obviously, but it gives you an idea of the value of that material. People aren't going to be, they're not stealing your plastics out of your curbside recycle bin. And of course, I don't want that, but I do want there to be that kind of value for that material at every step, such that you'll create this circularity and demand flow. So that I figuring that out would be the most significant innovation, and that's definitely going to take policy and politicians
Yeah.
as well as recycling innovators working together to make that kind of circularity happen.
Yeah. So in that regard, talking about politicians and government policies, so how can government policies, for instance, encourage stronger recycling markets?
Yeah, for sure. That minimum recycled content mandate doesn't have to be a lot.
Hmm.
I made a joke about this being, requiring 50% recycled content in this. That would be frankly much too much. Even if you did 5% or 10, that would work. That would create a strong pull for some of this plastic to get drawn up and recycled. So that's a huge policy lever. We're also seeing in a lot of US states extended producer responsibility for packaging being passed. Uh, that's kind of a blunt force instrument. Uh, I think it sort of remains to be seen, although I'm very heavily involved in working on it. Uh, it's a new policy that's kind of figuring out where it's going to fit. My worry is that it will create too much recycled material out there, and we really need that demand side. So the biggest thing that I'd advocate for, my dear friend, the politician, how are you watching? push those minimum recycled content mandates. Doesn't have to be a lot, you know. You got to make it sort of fair to the plastics processor because it is hard to use the recycled content, but you know something like 10%, that that really creates a nice demand pull, something predictable, something steady for the recycler, and that I think is what really could change the game.
Yes. So it also means that all of us have a role to play in the recycling business, whether individuals, government, or the private sector. So talking about the private sector specifically, what role do they have to play? What role do they have in designing products and packaging that are easier to recycle?
Yeah, that's 100% right. Thanks for saying that. I kind of missed that earlier. So, yeah, when we're shopping, if we can preferentially buy those materials that have got recycled content in the packaging, and this is not just consumer goods, when you're at the grocery store. In fact, I think it makes a bigger difference. In fact, I know it makes a bigger difference in some of the larger stuff that we do in life, right? Building a house or buying a car, things like that. Those types of things are actually many times more impactful than my my box of raisins example. But it all helps if you can buy the stuff that's got the recycled content, you're creating a little bit of a demand pull that will help uh, kind of goose the market. So I definitely encourage, hey, it's a little thing, but it helps. So I try to do that. We should all be trying to do that when we can.
Yeah. This is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. We are talking about recycling. So my other question is, if government, businesses, and individuals or citizens could do three things, yes, three things, to improve recycling systems, what would they be?
Yeah, so I'll start with the kind of counterintuitive one, which is when in doubt, throw it out. So, don't do the wish cycling thing. Don't put stuff in the recycle bin that actually isn't recyclable. You'll end up just contaminating the good, clean material. And so if you're not sure, I know this feels weird, but if you're not sure, put it in the trash. Um, the second thing is buy products that clearly indicate that they have some recycled content, and that helps pull in the market. And yeah, my third thing is this is kind of advice to myself, but maybe it'll land with you too, is hey, this is a business opportunity. Uh, don't overlook the possibilities of getting involved in recycling or waste management somehow. I I really believe that in the next generation, in the next century, if it's urban mining, if it's identifying something that's commonly thrown away, where you look at it and go, "Don't throw that away. That has value." Pursue that. That could be a really significant opportunity.
Know you to be someone who is very enthusiastic and passionate about the work you do, particularly regards to issues related to energy transition, circular economy, sustainability, recycling, among others. What gives you optimism about the future of recycling and the circular economy?
Oh, why? What gives me optimism? I think eh, um, I do just continue to see opportunity. You're right. I try to stay positive and whenever I slip up and get grouchy, go negative, so to speak, I regret it. We're all just kind of doing our best, and if you don't have a good day every day, but I think that there's continued interest in recycling. I guess that's what gives me optimism is it's widely viewed as a good practice. And that's something that's almost kind of installed in the operating system, right? I mean, not too many people are anti-recycling. So figuring that out and making the most of it, that definitely keeps me optimistic. You see, great solutions. You see companies that have figured out ways to take their material back and get it recycled. For a while, I worked in the roofing industry, believe it or not, and for asphalt shingles, and seeing how that industry has done so much more to collect old roofing and bring it back, for example. You see those types of solutions implemented by companies. Because I believe our for-profit sector, manufacturers, distributors, and so forth, are really the key. A company that I've been working for, doing some projects for, called AZEC, has got bins set up to collect material that comes off of job sites and bring that back and recycle it. That kind of stuff. I mean, that makes my day, especially when you see systems get big, where you have to collect job site scrap from two or three lumber yards is one thing. To collect it from 1,200 is another thing, right? So that that gives me optimism when I'll put this in a funny way, Francis, just to kind of tie things up with a bow, maybe. When people are making money recycling, that gives me optimism because that's what you need, right? You need it to be a profitable thing to collect and clean and process and recycle materials. If it's profitable, it'll happen. And so when I see that, that makes me optimistic.
Thank you so much. Any final words to our viewers and listeners?
I love the show. I'm a big fan of Dr. Francis Tuokuu. I'm wishing you continued success. I can't believe the growth you've had with this. It makes me jealous. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Okay.
And I'll be watching the future episodes with interest, and I'll probably end up suggesting a couple of things. But I'm honored to have been one of your guests on the Green Transition Show.
Yes, we are honored to have you on the show. So for viewers, those of you who are not aware, Martin and I have worked together at E2 Tech. He's provided guidance to me over the years, and I appreciate all his support over the years. He has been encouraging me, advising me on many things, and I'm so happy to have him on the show. This is how much time will allow us today. We appreciate your time. We hope that you subscribe to the channel and share and give us feedback, give us comments in order to improve on the channel. We bring you very innovative and policy level discussions on this show. And we encourage you to subscribe to the show as well. It is free. It is 100% free. You don't have to pay anything. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you very much for watching. And to Mari, thanks so much for being on this show. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Francis. Appreciate you.